Spine-chilling werewolf sightings revealed, terrifying encounters in the haunted UK forests. The air was thick with unease as dark whispers of a monstrous creature stirred fears in a small suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. The ground shook with anxiety, shadows slithered through the edges of lawns, and howls echoed like nightmares. Reports flooded social media, each post more harrowing than the last. Something was out there, stalking the night, and it was hungry. Sarah, a single mother nursing during late shifts, balanced her exhausting job with the demands of two lively kids, Joey and Mia. But something had shifted in their little world. Her 10-year-old, Joey, was on edge, glancing nervously toward the treeline from their living room window, his little hands curled into fists. Mia, 8 years old, hid her face in a stuffed bear, her wide eyes reflecting an incomprehensible fear. The neighborhood buzzed with tales of monstrous figures lurking just beyond the old factory, and she could feel the dread seeping under the door like a chilling draft. "Mom, we heard howling last night," Joey said, voice shaking as the sun dipped below the horizon. "It sounded like something was in the woods." "Probably just the wind, sweetie," Sarah replied, but her voice trembled. She wanted to believe it. Each painful howl that rippled through the night gripped her heart, a stark reminder of how fragile their world had become. Late that evening, shadows grew darker, flickering against the street lamp outside. She locked the doors, hands shaking, a chill spreading through her spine. As she made dinner, she couldn't shake a feeling the house felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. The night held its breath, alive with something sinister. Outside, the trees rustled like hushed whispers, and her pulse quickened at every creak of the floorboards. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, after another grueling shift, Sarah returned home to find Mia trembling in the corner of the living room, eyes filled with terror. Joey stood by her side, stuttering through his words. "We saw it, Mom. A monster. A huge wolf." It was glowing. She wanted to brush it off, a child's imagination painting monsters in the dark. But as eerie incidents began to pile up, pet disappearances, frantic whispers among neighbors, the police dismissing it all as urban legends, the barrier between fear and reality began to erode. On a particularly frigid night, cold air clawed at her skin. Shadows danced menacingly, and just beyond the glow of their porch light, something large moved in the blackness, eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. Sarah's heart raced, flooding her body with adrenaline as she sensed that the monster wasn't just a story stitched from the seams of folklore. As every door was locked tight and her children's anxious breaths filled the silence, one question loomed in her mind: what if the true terror wasn't outside their home? What if it was closer, lurking within the hearts of those she thought she knew? The next night, she decided to confront her reclusive neighbor, Mr. Hargrove. His house stood dark and foreboding as she approached, a feel of dread crawling up her spine. As she knocked, her sanity tethered tight, she couldn't shake the feeling that uncovering the truth about him might unravel everything she believed. And when she finally learned, when the past began to surface like dark waters, Sarah realized the fabric of safety surrounding her family was fraying, threatening to drown them all. Would she stand against the monster that lurked at her doorstep? Or would her whole life unravel, devoured by the darkness blending into the shadows? As the sun sank beneath the horizon, casting long shadows that reached out like desperate hands, Sarah's breath quickened. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Mr. Hargrove's weary face twisted into a scowl. His hair lay matted and wild, eyes bleary and sunken. A tension hummed in the air, thick as fog. "Sarah," he said, his voice gravelly, as if he hadn't spoken in years. "What do you want?" I came to talk, she replied, forcing her words through a throat constricted by anxiety. About the howling. The sightings. His eyes narrowed, fear flickering momentarily before he masked it with indifference. Stay away from the woods. You shouldn't go looking for trouble. It was a warning veiled as a command, and though Sarah felt the urge to flee, her determination anchored her in place. But I need to know what's happening. The kids are terrified. Listen to me. He snapped, suddenly alive with urgency. There are things in those woods that you don't understand. Things that wish to remain hidden. Chills snaked down her spine. You know something, don't you? His shoulders sagged, and for a moment, the walls of his guarded demeanor began to crumble. They'll come for you, hunters, monsters, and they don't care who gets caught in their path. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face as she recalled Joey and Mia's fearful gaze, eyes wide with terror at the mere mention of the dark. Each story they heard from neighbors swirled in her mind like a looming storm. Mr. Hargrove, you have to tell me the truth, she implored. What do you know about that creature? He hesitated, eyes darting toward the trees like he expected them to creep forward. Years back, I lost someone to it. She went into the woods, and never came back. We thought it was just folklore until the howls began. I've seen. Suddenly, he stiffened, a look of sheer horror engulfing his face. Before she could question him further, an ear-splitting howl erupted from the depths of the dark forest, reverberating through the night like a roar of thunder. Mr. Hargrove's lips pressed into a thin line, his breath hitching in his throat. What was that? She gasped, a surge of dread clawing at her heart. That, he whispered, his voice trembling, is what I warned you about. A shadow flitted through the dim light, darting just beyond the reach of illumination. It moved too quickly, too fluidly. Panic surged within Sarah. Get your kids and leave. He shouted, diving back into his house, slamming the door behind him. Was it that easy? She gripped the edges of her panic, desperately reaching for hope as she sprinted back to her home, the howls echoing ominously in her ears. Each step felt weighted with the knowledge that something was closing in. Sarah flung open the door, her heart racing, and found Joey clutching Mia, both staring wide-eyed at the treeline beyond the backyard. The darkness loomed, swollen and quivering, as if it held its breath. Mom, it's coming! Joey screamed. The feeling of dread suffocated her, wrapping around her throat, stifling her breath. We need to lock the doors, get away from the windows. But as she moved, the hairs on the back of her neck prickled. Something was watching. In the distance, the howls echoed again, more insistent this time, drowning out the children's whimpers. Would their home really keep them safe? In the basement. She cried out, urgency tightening her voice. They raced down the stairs, her mind spiraling with the shadows that reached through the windows like claws. Once they were inside, Sarah locked the door and pressed her back against it, heart hammering. But in the unsettling silence, one thing stood unshakable, the certainty that whatever hunted them was no longer just outside. It was drawing closer, looming in the dark, and it wasn't finished yet. But as the house trembled with each echoing howl, Sarah realized that the answer to survival lay in one gut-wrenching thought. What if the creature wasn't just in the woods, but had always been right next to them, staring back through familiar eyes? What was lurking in the shadows of her own home? The air was heavy, thick with dread. Sarah leaned against the basement door, straining to hear any sound beyond the howl that seemed to echo through her bones. The kids huddled close, whispering frantic questions that bounced around the dark space like errant shadows. Is it gone, Mommy? Mia's voice trembled, small and frightened. I don't know, honey, Sarah said, trying to sound brave for them. But we can't find out. The basement was damp and cold, and the darkness pressed against her like a weight. Every creak of the house felt amplified, a sinister reminder that danger lurked just outside their sanctuary. Maybe we should call Dad, Joey suggested, trying to stay strong for his sister. "There's no time for that," Sarah hissed, her heart racing as she glanced around at the clutter, a tangle of boxes, old furniture, remnants of a life long past. "We can't risk making a noise." She could see their faces, pale and frightened, lit only by the faint light filtering through the small window above. It sent shadows dancing across the walls, and the movement only heightened her anxiety. Suddenly, the howling returned, and this time it was closer. Mommy!" Mia whimpered, clutching her brother's arm tightly. "Shoo!" Sarah pressed her finger to her lips, desperately trying to silence their breathing. The howls morphed into deep growls, vibrating within their chests, and Sarah's instincts screamed at her. She couldn't just wait. No, they had to be proactive, to push against the encroaching terror. Her mind raced, trying to think of a plan. "Stay here," she ordered, her voice gaining an edge of steel. "I'm going to get a flashlight. Please don't leave us," Joey cried, eyes wide with fear. "I'll be right back," she promised, trying to soothe them while feeling the pit in her stomach grow deeper. As she hesitated, guilt shot through her. Leaving them felt wrong, felt dangerous. But if she didn't, what would happen? She had to know. She had to fight. Taking a breath that felt like shards in her throat, Sarah shifted into the darkness of the basement, reaching for a tiny window. The glass was grimy, thoughts racing through her mind about all the creatures that lived just beyond sight. In the back of her mind, Hargrove's warnings echoed, haunting her thoughts. What if they weren't just hunting? What if they were hunting for her? A sudden crash resounded above, shaking the house. Sarah's heart leapt into her throat, panic unfurling like a wildflower blossoming in a graveyard. "Mom?" Joey's voice came, whispering now. The fear saturated the air. Rushing to the stairs, Sarah pushed open the door an inch, her breath held tight. She peered into the murky darkness of the house beyond, an uneasy sense of foreboding clawing at her from within. Another howl pierced the air. This time, closer, sharper. It was unmistakably coming from inside the house. It yanked at her, pulling her toward the hallway, and just as she stepped forward a figure darted past. She barely caught sight of it, but something primal and dark surged into her chest. The fleeting shadow was swift, impossibly fast, and she ripped the door open wider, tugging her children down into the dim light of the basement. "Get back!" she shouted as another crash echoed, this time louder. Something heavy breathing, something feral, was in the house. "Mom!" Joey screamed, and Sarah felt her heart fracture. "Stay close!" she yelled back, scanning the basement for anything she could use, a weapon, a shield, anything. Then the soft scuffle of nails on wood startled her. A low growl rumbled just outside the basement door. "Mommy!" Mia cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. They heard it again, sharper this time, rising in pitch. The growl turned into a harsh snarl, and the door shuddered as something powerful collided against it from the other side. Was her home their haven or their coffin? Hope began to fade as the growling intensified. Just then, from the corner of her eye, Sarah spotted something, a pair of eyes glowing in the gloom, too familiar, too dangerous. "What have you done?" whispered a voice she recognized. Stirring realizations buried deep. And as the door began to splinter, Sarah understood that the creature wasn't just from the woods. It was part of the very fabric of her life, and it was ready to feed on her fears. But what if the real monster had been among them all along? What was truly lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? The door rattled again, the wood splintering with each feral crash. Sarah pressed her back against it, her legs trembling with fear. The adrenaline coursed through her veins like fire, mixed with icy dread. "Mia, Joey, I need you to listen to me." She turned to her children, panic alive in her eyes. "We have to stay quiet. No matter what." Mia nodded, her small body curled tightly against her brother, who attempted to look stoic, but his face betrayed him. Together, they all faced the door, hearts pounding as the growling morphed into a series of monstrous snarls. "What is it?" Joey whispered, his voice barely a sound over the chaos just outside. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her stomach nodding. "But I think it knows we're here." Another crash, a violent vibration that shook the walls. Sarah's breath came in quick, shallow gasps. She couldn't let fear consume her, she had to be stronger than it. With a rush of instinct, she turned back toward the shadows of the basement, searching for anything that could fend off the monster looming just beyond the door. She spotted a rusted metal pipe protruding from one of the boxes, a possible weapon. Grabbing it, she felt a surge of determination. "Stay here," she ordered again, her voice steady now. "I'm going to check." "No, Mommy. Please don't leave us," Joey cried, gripping Mia's arm tighter. "I have to," she said fiercely, though doubt creased her brow. With one last look at her terrified children, she edged toward the door, holding the pipe like a lifeline. The growling escalated. Something scrabbled at the floorboards, a sound so dreadfully familiar, like nails against wood. Sarah steeled herself, gripping the handle. The door splintered again, sending shards flying. She steeled herself for what she might see. With a push, she swung the door wide, the noise of the creaking metal swallowing the distorted sounds of terror outside. What she saw left her breathless. The house was steeped in darkness, yet she could make out a massive shape, fur rippling, muscles taut like a coiled spring. The creature stood at the edge of the hallway, eyes glowing like twin stars, red, haunting, dead. Sarah felt her knees weaken as she faced the beast. The growl rumbled from its throat, a deep reverberation that sent tremors through her body. It leaned closer, breath hot and rancid, filling her nostrils and curling her stomach. Instinct kicked in. She swung the pipe wildly, driven by fear, adrenaline, and a mother's desperate love. The metal connected with something solid, a yelp echoed through the narrow space, followed by a flurry of motion. The beast recoiled, but only for a moment, eyes never leaving hers. "Mommy!" She heard Mia scream, and the sound jolted her back to reality. She couldn't abandon them to this nightmare. Sarah thrust her body into the hallway, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. The creature charged again, but this time she was ready. She could hear Joey's frantic breathing, Mia's small whimpers. With each thundering heartbeat, fear transformed into a fierce resolve. "Run!" she screamed, urging them to the stairs. Her children bolted past her, small feet pounding against the floor. But they weren't alone, the growl swelled behind them, growing louder, more deafening, a dark echo that promised nothing but violence. As they scrambled toward the steps, Sarah felt the door slam back behind her, separating them from the creature. They clattered up the stairs, fear pushing them forward. "Where do we go?" Joey panted. "What do we do?" "Up. We need to get to the attic," Sarah shouted, memory racing. She remembered the trapdoor. If they reached it, they could hide, barricade themselves. Climbing rapidly, she pushed the door open and ushered her terrified children through the narrow space. The attic was dim and filled with dust. It felt like a time capsule of forgotten things. Old storage boxes loomed like ghostly figures. The window creaked ominously, casting shadows in the corners. They huddled together, breaths coming in wild gasps. "What if it finds us?" Mia asked, eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I won't let it." But Sarah's voice shook as she spoke. A thud echoed from below. The house came alive with the heavy presence of the beast once more. "What if it gets in?" Joey whimpered, searching Sarah's face for answers. A door creaked open below, and she saw the flicker of red eyes gaze up at them through the dust-choked light. It was hunting them. As the ominous growl resonated through the wooden beams, Sarah's resolve began to fray. Was there anywhere safe left in this house? And then, out of the silence, came a new sound, a scratching from the attic door, the unmistakable sign that it wouldn't stop until it got what it wanted. What if the attic wasn't their refuge, but a trap? Would they outsmart it or be ensnared forever? The scratching intensified, claw-like nails scraping against the old wood. It was relentless. Each sound sent a shiver coursing through Sarah, tightening her grip on the metal pipe. The creature knew they were up there, knew they were close, and it was patient. But so was Sarah, she had to be. "Shoo," she whispered fiercely, pressing a finger to her lips, wide eyes darting between Mia and Joey. The twins watched her, terror etched on their faces. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, a frantic drum echoing in the stillness of the attic. They had to remain silent. Mia's chin quivered, tears cascading down her cheeks as she whispered, "Mommy, I'm scared." Sarah pulled her children closer, the enveloping darkness offering them little comfort. She took a deep breath, forced herself to focus. They needed a plan. The attic was a dead end. No windows, no escape. What would be the best way to fight back? The trapdoor, she finally murmured, glancing toward the corner of the attic where the old wound-up ropes and a few forgotten decorations lay scattered. "We might have to lure it away and then we can make a run for it." "What if it catches you?" Joey's eyes were wide, pleading. "I'll distract it." "Just hide," she urged. The words felt heavy in her mouth, but panic whispered for action. She had to give them hope. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. A suffocating silence hung in the air, suspended like an awful secret about to be revealed. Fear coiled around her heart as she strained to listen. Then she heard it, a low, guttural growl, deep and threatening, swelling in the silence. It sent a wave of cold dread coursing through her body, paralyzing her with its promise of violence. It was even closer than before, lurking near the attic door, waiting. Sarah stood slowly, her heart racing as adrenaline surged through her. "Mia, Joey, stay quiet," she said urgently, her eyes darting to the trapdoor. With calculated resolve, she stepped forward, hand poised to pull the latch, the only means of escape. As she bent to the trapdoor, dread gnawed at her. Would she open it only to lead the creature right to them? But she had no choice. Time was running out. The growl resonated again, now mixed with a snort, that vile, pungent breath ready to taint the air around them. She motioned for her kids to remain behind her, heart thudding violently. Steeling herself, she grasped the wooden fixture and flung it open, the hinges creaking eerily in protest. The yawning darkness beneath beckoned them, a crypt of shadows promising both doom and safety. "Down," she hissed, urging her children towards the unknown. Mia clutched Joey tightly, her other hand gripping Sarah's waist as they all slid into the narrow space. The smell of rot enveloped them, and they coughed as dust filled their lungs. Just as Sarah began to climb in, she risked a quick glance back. The attic door creaked open, revealing nothing but the darkness and the shadows of twisted limbs. And then, for a split second, she saw it, a flash of eyes glowing crimson, pawing the threshold with a hunger that twisted her stomach. She felt the warmth of her children pressed against her, their small bodies shaking with quivering breaths. Fear clutched them all, but Sarah was resolute. There was no going back. "Hold on," she whispered, crawling deeper into the hidden passage, "we'll find a way out." As the darkness swamped them, there came a low snarl above, a sound so filled with menace that it seemed to vibrate through the very wood of the house. The menace of the creature above hung in the air. Would they discover the unknown exit, or had they sealed their fate by descending into the depths? The shadows danced around them, whispering dreadful secrets as a faint scratching began again, now below them, relentless and chilling. What awaited them in the dark? The air in the cramped crawlspace was thick and oppressive, laden with fear and the musty scent of decay. Shadows enveloped them, stretching further into the narrow passage like fingers trying to grasp hold of their very souls. "Mommy, are we safe?" Mia's voice cracked, her tiny body trembling against Sarah's side. Joey clutched tightly to his sister, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if he were trying to will the darkness away. "We're okay," Sarah whispered, forcing herself to believe it. "Just stay quiet and close." The scratching above morphed into a sound that made her blood run cold, a soft thumping, as though something heavy was pacing the attic floor, waiting for them to make a sound. She could almost feel its eyes boring into them from above, searching for the intruders in its lair. "Sarah," Joey murmured, the whimpered call laced with unease. "What if it finds us down here? Then we'll fight." Her resolve wavered, and she breathed in sharply, trying to mask the trembling in her words. "We'll fight together." As they crawled deeper, every damp corner echoed with their fear. The passage twisted and turned as if it had a mind of its own. Too many turns, too few signs, every second felt like an eternity. The air felt colder, the walls seemed to close in around them. Then, a scuttling sound erupted from the far end of the passage, discordant and unsettling. Sarah's heart fell into her stomach. What if it wasn't just the creature above? What if something worse dwelled down here? "Mia, Joey," she hissed. "We need to be absolutely silent." The scuttling grew closer, a series of sharp clinks that echoed ominously against the stone. There was something profoundly unnatural about the rhythm, a cadence that didn't belong to anything human. Sarah felt her skin prickle with dread. Fear gnawed at her insides, twisting and tightening like a vice. Suddenly, the sound stopped. An unbearable quiet fell over them. Accompanied by the stink of mildew and rot, it suffocated her senses. She could hear the faintest whimpering from Mia, the sound so small it felt swallowed by the space around them. Sarah glanced back at her children, their wide eyes like saucers in the low light. Despair threatened to engulf them all. Then, without warning, the darkness around them shifted, flickering momentarily like a faulty light bulb. A shadow danced at the edge of her vision, and her breath caught in her throat. "Mommy," Joey said, and she could almost hear his pulse racing. "I see something." Before she could respond, a low growl erupted from the depths of the shadows, low and throaty. It sent a shudder of terror through Sarah as she stumbled backward, instinctively shielding her children. An unseen force loomed just out of reach, an impossible presence that threatened to swallow them whole. "Get back!" she roared, the primal instinct to protect her children surging through her veins. It was as if fear had ignited a fire in her. But just as she thought she might reach for the metal pipe tucked away, something slithered through the darkness, a glimmer of the unknown. The passage twisted wider, revealing something glistening and wet, shapes moving like smoke. Was it alive? "Mommy, please!" Mia cried, her voice cracking the tension like glass shattering. Panic surged through Sarah like a desperate tide. She had to act, they had to get moving, but all directions now seemed equally threatening. Heart racing, she made a decision. "Follow me," she commanded, pulling her children close as she began to crawl away from the direction of the growl. Silence hung heavy after them, only to be broken by the steady pounding of Sarah's heart and the children's frightened breaths echoing around them. Just then, the walls began to shake, a deep thrumming that sent vibrations through her bones. The passage felt alive, shifting in response to something more sinister. Was it the creature above? Before she could comprehend the horror unraveling, a chill slithered down her spine. In the depths of that darkness, something was watching, something that breathed and hungered for more than just fear. What had she led her children into, and would they ever find a way out? As they crawled forward, the oppressive darkness seemed to throb around them. A clammy sensation wrapped itself around Sarah, leaving her heartbeat pulsing like a drum in her ears. For every inch forward, dread mounted on her back like a heavy shroud. It was as though the passage themselves squeezed tighter with each movement. The shadows whispered, and the low growl from above transformed into guttural sounds, a symphony of snarls that warped her mind further into paranoia. She gritted her teeth and pressed on, fighting against the suffocating fear that threatened to engulf her whole. "Mommy, what is it? Joey's voice wavered, a frail thread hanging in the yawning void. I don't know, buddy, she replied, steeling her resolve. But we have to keep moving. We can't let it find us. Then, a sudden crash above sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins. Something or someone was in the attic. The sound was chaotic, an avalanche of wood splintering and crashing, echoing down into their dark shelter. The children clutched each other, raw panic radiating off them like heat waves in a desert. Stay close. Sarah hissed. They fumbled through the passage, hearts racing in sync as they turned another corner. Just ahead, a faint flicker of light pulsed like a heartbeat. It beckoned them, promising hope. She reached for it, urgency grasping her throat. What if it's a way out? But the moment she reached it, the light extinguished, swallowed by the shadows as if it had never existed. Mommy! Mia squeaked, tugging at Sarah's pant leg, her tiny fingers trembling. I'm scared. Sarah knelt, forcing herself to meet Mia's wide, tear-filled eyes. I know, sweetie. But we can't stop now. We have to be brave. Just then, the walls around them reverberated again, a violent shudder that sent a shower of dust from above. Sarah held her breath, listening intently. The thumping came again, louder and more deliberate, a countdown of sorts. The scuttling resumed, circling them, skittering much closer this time. A flash of movement darted through the gloom, quick as lightning. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. It was as if they were being hunted, the creatures not just waiting but toying with them. Mommy, it's in the dark, Joey whispered, his tone a haunting echo of childlike terror. She squeezed his hand. I want to let it get us. In that moment, a sound pierced the oppressive atmosphere, a sound that made her freeze in dread. A child's laughter. Not just any laughter but a tinkling that seemed far too innocent for the fear that loomed in the air. Mia, Joey, stay behind me, Sarah ordered, pressing her back against the cold stone wall. As the laughter echoed again, hauntingly familiar, her gut churned. She could almost picture Mia and Joey when they played in the park, giggling without care. But this was twisted, unholy. That innocent laughter morphed into the guttural growl she had heard before, now laced with mockery. Fear washed over her, chilling her from the inside out. It wasn't just an echo anymore, something shifted, taking form in the shadows. Then, the walls trembled again, but this time a jagged crack appeared, slicing through the darkness. From within that crack poured a tapestry of shadows, swirling and undulating like smoke. Sarah's heart raced as she realized, they were not alone. Run! She screamed, her voice hoarse as she shoved her children forward. The crack pulsed, frost creeping along the stones, and the shadows began to shape into clawed limbs. They fled deeper into the crawlspace, the thundering growl resurrecting behind them, fury charging like a wild storm. Each heartbeat sounded deafening, now a countdown to the inevitable. Sarah's mind raced. How long could they evade the darkness? Then she remembered a piece of driftwood, an old lamp she'd heard clattering in the distance as they crawled, something that might offer light and a chance to fight back. But as she turned to direct them toward that potential salvation, she felt a tugging at the hem of her shirt, a distinct chill brushing down her spine. Mommy, it's here. Breath caught in her throat, she faced her children, unwilling to turn around and confront the horror inching ever closer. What lay behind her? Was it too late for them? In the darkened passage, her resolve solidified as she prepared to stand against whatever loomed. This time, they would not run. The shadows tightened around them, and Sarah gathered her courage. If they want us, she whispered into the suffocating abyss, they'll have to fight for it. But the question lingered, would it be enough? Or was this the moment they crossed paths with something far more terrifying than they could imagine? The shadows twisted and churned, drawing closer with each raucous breath. Sarah made a stand, her heart a pounding drum, a relentless echo thrumming in her ears. Whatever hunted them was near, and she felt its darkness creep like ice across her skin. Joey's hold tightened, his fingers trembling against her palm, while Mia clutched her side, wide-eyed and terrified. "Mommy, I can't see." Mia whimpered, her voice a raw whisper that sliced through the heavy silence. "Just stay close." Sarah hissed, every instinct screaming at her to turn, to face whatever lurked behind them. But she couldn't. She focused on the crack, the twisting shadows pouring forth, and fought the urge to flee. They needed to keep moving. The darkness seethed around them, taunting her with faint echoes of laughter, mocking their terror. Another crash sounded from above, more debris falling, a reminder of the chaos they had just fled. She glanced down the narrow passage. In the distance, the airborne disturbance fluttered into silence, a deceptive calm that filled the air with dread. And then she saw it, a glimmer, a promise of something bright. Sarah dared to hope. "There. That way." Her words burst from her lips, and with a fierce tug, she pulled her children forward. The crack appeared alive now, pulsating with a rhythmic beat as if controlled by a heartbeat far deeper than her own. As they moved toward the light, Sarah's heart surged with another possibility: perhaps they could escape. But the shadows quickened. The laughter transformed, spiraling into something malevolent. It slithered through her bones, urging her to stumble back. "It's not safe," Joey cried, the sapience of a child submerged in fear guiding his voice. Fingers grazed the wall, cold and damp. Sarah pressed forward, urging herself to push through the urgency pulsing in her veins. The light flickered again, closer now, a promise or a trap? Visions of warmth and safety collided with the raw instinct to run, but she refused to give in to despair. Then, with a shattering roar, the shadows broke apart, scattering like clouds in a storm. For a fleeting moment, the passage lit up with a cerulean glow, illuminating grotesque shapes swirling in the dark, a twisted parody of a playroom, littered with forgotten toys and memories. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, claws snapping through the air with a sound like shattering glass. Sarah screamed, her mind screaming for flight. "Mommy! Please, don't leave us!" Their innocent pleas stoked her fear, igniting an inferno of desperation. She whipped around, facing the advancing mass of darkness. "No!" she yelled, brandishing her arms as if to ward off a curse. But the laughter returned, mocking her boldness. Then, instinct kicked in. "Joey, Mia, come on." She grabbed hold of Joey's arm and directed them left, into the alcove where the light flickered like a heartbeat. Yet as they rushed in, the shadows grew defiant, wailing as they lost their prey to the bitter light. A crash echoed behind them, the crack had splintered open wider. The dark thrummed, rippling into a new shape, more menacing than ever. Tendrils of shadow lashed out, seeking to ensnare them. "Faster!" Sarah screamed. But ahead, the light pulsed once more before exhausting into utter darkness. Panic surged within her, impossible to contain. The abnormal quiet became unbearable, pressing down like a weight. Out of breath, she finally stumbled upon the lamp, rusty and cracked. Her heart sank deep as she fumbled with it, praying it had not succumbed to the dark. "Mommy, it's here!" Mia shrieked, her eyes bulging as she pointed to the inky tendrils creeping toward them. Hell-bent on survival, Sarah struck the lamp against the wall, sending a shower of sparks flying. Light flared up, fierce and furious, illuminating the grotesque faces twisted in the dark. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agonizing unison, but the brief respite offered little comfort. "Grip tight!" she shouted, pulling her children against her in a protective embrace. They formed a barrier of light, but it flickered dangerously. "What do we do now?" Joey asked, fear lacing his words. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, the tremor in her voice betraying her resolve. Instinct kicked in again, urging her forward. "We fight, we run, and we don't look back." Despite the shadows looming, an image of triumph sparked in her mind. But uncertainty clawed at their very souls, and Sarah felt the pulse in her chest match the thrum of the darkness. Could they truly defeat whatever haunted the shadows? Then, as if in response, the shadows surged again, coalescing with a deafening roar. The ground trembled beneath them, the passage was shifting. Sarah blinked, her pulse hammering, the light wavering. Hold on. But before they could react, everything dissolved in a cacophony of screams. A blinding light flashed just before plunging them back into the black void. The question tore through Sarah's mind: had they embraced their escape, or had they just entered a darker nightmare? Mommy? Mia's voice broke again, trembling. Stay close, I'm right here, she breathed, whispering a silent prayer. As the shadows caved in around them, she couldn't shake the feeling they were not just facing darkness but something even more sinister. A new fear loomed, waiting to be unveiled. What awaited them now in the depths of the unknown? They plummeted into a void, silence wrapping around them like a shroud. It felt endless, a suspension of time where every heartbeat echoed against nothingness. Sarah's grip tightened on her children, the weight of the darkness threatening to swallow them whole. The shadows didn't relent, they slipped through the air like liquid smoke, searching, probing. Suddenly, the void ruptured, expelling them into a nightmare of twisted trees and gnarled roots. A forest loomed around them, blackened trunks reaching up like skeletal fingers into a moonless sky. The air was heavy, thick with decay, and the scent was all wrong, sweet like rotting fruit, sickening and oppressive. Where are we? Joey's voice trembled, breaking through the suffocating silence. Sarah struggled to find her voice. I don't know, but we need to stay together. The forest felt alive, whispering secrets in a language she couldn't comprehend. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of her lingering light. Can we go home? Mia's eyes were wide, reflecting the fear that wrapped around Sarah's heart. Not yet, she replied with a quiver. We have to find a way out of here. But doubt nibbled at the edges of her thoughts. Deep down, she feared there was no escape. Just then, a rustle came from the bushes, a deep growl reverberating through the air. Sarah froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her feet were glued to the ground. The sound was raw and primal, vibrating in her chest. Mommy! Mia whimpered, squeezing Sarah's arm with all her strength. Before Sarah could respond, a massive figure erupted from the underbrush, eyes glowing like coals in the murky shadows. The creature was massive, shoulders broad and hunched, covered in matted fur that shimmered with an otherworldly light. Its snout was elongated, serrated teeth glinting in the faint glow of the flickering lamp. Run! Sarah screamed, and adrenaline pulsed through her, igniting her limbs. They turned and dashed deeper into the forest, branches clawing at their skin as they tore through the undergrowth. The growls followed, echoing like thunder in the night. Panic gripped Sarah's heart as she glanced back. The creature was a blur, moving with terrifying speed, closing the distance with every step. Mommy! The cries behind her felt like nails driving into her chest. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe, only run. Up ahead, the trees thinned, and in the distance, a flicker of light wavered like a mirage. Hope surged, but her feet felt heavier. The darkness twisted and howled, alive with the pursuit. The creature leaped, grazing her shoulder with a burning sting. No! Sarah cried out, but she forced herself onward, dragging her children behind her. Each stride felt like a battle against the unseen weight of terror that pressed in from all sides. Bursting into the clearing, darkness fell away, and they stumbled into a ring of soft glowing light. It pulsed with warmth, offering a brief sanctuary. Is it gone? Joey panted, scanning the shadows as if expecting the beast to appear at any moment. A growl reverberated from just outside the circle, sending chills down her spine. Not yet, Sarah whispered, breathless. A figure loomed at the edge, half hidden in the shadows. It stood on two legs now, features more human than animal, but its eyes glowed with the same savage hunger. Join us, it beckoned, voice silky, tainted with malice. We can protect you, from the dark. Sarah recoiled. We don't want your help. But the figure only smiled, revealing the same set of predatory teeth. You'll need it, soon. As they huddled, trembling in the light, she knew something monumental loomed on the horizon. They weren't just in a fight for survival, they were being drawn into a deeper, darker game, one with ancient rules that she could only begin to comprehend. And from the black edges of the clearing, shadows writhed in anticipation. What were they truly facing in this unending night? The flickering light pulsed like a heartbeat, and terror coiled within Sarah's chest. The figure with glowing eyes stood just beyond, tempting them with a fake promise of safety. Join us, it whispered, voice smooth yet laced with venom. No! Sarah shouted, clenching her fists, steel growing around her heart. We won't fall for your lies. The creature's smile widened, exposing gleaming teeth like daggers. You don't understand. It stepped closer, the shadows shifting as if they had a mind of their own. There's no escape from the dark, but we can show you the power in it. Stay back. Sarah pressed her kids tighter against her, breath hitching as the growls from outside merged with a chorus of haunting laughter. It was a sound that cut through the night, chilling her to the bone. The forest felt alive, curious and chaotic, eyes watching from the darkness, hungry for their downfall. Mia whimpered, curled against Sarah's side, while Joey gripped her hand tighter than ever. Mommy, what do we do? He whispered, panic glistening in his eyes. Steeling herself, Sarah scanned the clearing, her heart pounding like a drum. If they were to survive, she needed a strategy. They couldn't let fear rule them, they had to act. We fight. We find a way to push through, she said, determination infusing her weary voice. Fight with what? Joey's eyes searched hers, desperate for hope. But before Sarah could answer, the darkness surged, creeping closer like a predator closing in. The creature's growl echoed, primal and threatening, shaking the very ground beneath them. She could feel the shadows pool at her feet, the tension thick as storm clouds. Then, miraculously, the light surged brighter, illuminating the rules of the dark that pressed in on them. Sarah's heart raced. We have to create a distraction. Mia's wide eyes reflected her mother's determination. How, Mommy? Hold on tight, Sarah said, adrenaline flooding her veins. We'll use the darkness against them. Sarah forced her gaze toward the circle of light, urging her aching limbs into action. We need something to block their path. If we can make a loud enough noise just outside the glow, the creature's eyes glinted, assessing them with predatory hunger. It edged closer, and the shadows drew tighter like chains. Without hesitation, Sarah plunged into the thicket surrounding them, encouraging her children to follow suit. They pushed through the underbrush to collect fallen branches, the scraping leaves muffling their frantic breaths. Panic swirled as they worked in unison, collecting what they could. Though fear hissed in their ears, Sarah could feel strength guiding her hands. Ready? She asked, turning back to watch the darkness closing in behind them. The creature prowled, waiting, watching intently. Yes. Mia declared, her voice unyielding amidst the creeping despair. On 3 then. Sarah said, heart pounding. 1, 2, 3. With all her strength, Sarah hurled the bundle of branches toward the shadows beyond. The impact was explosive, echoed by a thunderous crack that shattered the stillness. For a moment, there was chaos. The creature lunged, drawn by the noise, and the branches tumbled into the darkness, momentarily breaking its focus. Sarah seized the moment, pulling her children back into the circle of light, desperate to hold the barrier together against the malevolence threatening to engulf them. Quick! Run! She urged as the creature snarled, snapping at the branches, erupting in fury at the disruption. The scent of decay mingled with adrenaline, and they sprinted forward, hearts racing. As they fled deeper into the forest, Sarah could hear the growls growing distant yet alive. They dashed past gnarled trees, shadows clawing at their ankles, but the pulsing light was a beacon guiding them. "Mom! Where are we going?" Joey gasped, exhaustion tightening his breath. "Anywhere but here," she yelled, pressing past branches that scratched at her skin, fighting against the dark that whispered of despair. But the landscape was shifting, alive with the threat of the creatures that lurked just out of sight. "Follow me," she urged, sensing the weight of shadows clinging to their heels. Finally, they burst into a clearing swept by luminous moonlight, breaking forth like a breath after drowning. The night sky felt wide and open, unmarred by darkness. "Look ahead," Joey shouted. A path. A narrow trail wound through the trees, illuminated by an ethereal glow. Sarah felt a rush of hope surge, pushing her body forward. "Let us go." She took Mia's hand, gripping Joey's arm as they raced against the dark at their backs. As they ran, it felt like they were racing fate past twisted roots and echoes of growls that echoed like thunder behind them. Sarah's heart thumped loud in her chest, lungs burning. "Faster," she urged, fear clawing her throat. She wouldn't let them down. It was then she felt a shift in the atmosphere, a weight that bore down on her. The air felt electric, fraught with energy, as if the dark was gathering, building into a storm. They stumbled into the path, shoes crunching against the earth as they hurried toward the wood's edge. A figure danced ahead, but this time it wasn't sinister. It was illuminated by the purest light, a wandering spirit flickering, ghost-like. "This way," it beckoned, voice threading through the chorus of howls. Without second-guessing, they turned as instructed, feeling the shift of shadows begin to recede. "Keep going," Sarah said, guiding her children toward the spectral glow. As they approached, the light embraced them, and it momentarily wrapped around their fear like a cocoon, wrapping them in warmth. The shadows lingered just behind, clawing aimlessly, the growls fading into whispers. The spirit dissolved for a brief moment, granting Sarah a fleeting glimpse of a way through a shimmering portal hovering on the tree's edge. "Mom! We can make it!" Joey exclaimed, hope alive in his voice. "Together!" Sarah shouted, determination infusing her movements. They bolted toward the portal, shadows swirling desperately behind them as the dark lunged. But just seconds before the growl erupted again, they leaped through the glowing threshold in tandem. A sharp pull enveloped them, and then, just like that, they tumbled out into the warmth of dawn, light spilling around them, wrapping them in safety. They were back in their yard, breathless with the knowledge of what they'd escaped and the terrors they'd witnessed. Yet fear lingered in the back of Sarah's mind. They had survived this time, but what came next? "Mama?" Mia whispered, confusion clouding her little face. "Yes, sweetheart?" Sarah breathed, feeling her heartbeat slow. "Are the monsters gone?" Sarah knelt down, enveloping her children in a tight embrace. "We might have escaped the monsters, but it's the memory of them that may never leave. We just have to be strong if they come back." In that moment, Sarah understood the power of her resolve, the urgency of the fight. They would always face the darkness together, bound not only by blood but by the courage to stand against whatever lurked in the shadows. "Whatever happens next, we carry the light with us," she whispered, clinging to her children tighter as they cast glances to the edge of the woods, knowing the shadows were still there. But so was their strength. The dawn broke bright, promising hope and healing, yet the forest beyond still swayed with secrets of the darkness. "Mom, let us stay inside today," Joey suggested, his voice still shaking but carrying the strength born of survival. "Great idea," Sarah agreed, breathing in the new day like it was life itself. As they stepped back into their home, unsure of what tomorrow might bring, the only thing certain was this: their love would always protect them. Together, they could face whatever monsters came their way. And as light streamed through the windows, one thing felt clear: they would keep the darkness at bay and always, always remember the battle they'd won. "Now, before you go, here's what you need to do," Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the horror coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ride. And don't wait even one more second, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how vital your support is to our community.